In our quest to understand the tapestry of human history, the fabric often presents threads that seem to deviate from the established pattern. One such thread, often plucked from discussions by historians, is the enigma of Tartaria. This purportedly vast and influential empire, believed to span significant parts of Eurasia, represents an alternative narrative of our past. If true, it would mean humanity's view of history as recent as the 1800s could be largely skewed and covered up. It would also mean that ancient technologies such as resonance frequencies, sacred geometry, and even city-building technologies have been destroyed, covered up, and made rigid. The reality that some historical events or civilizations could have been intentionally obscured by the powers that be isn't really that far-fetched. Consider for a moment the evidence suggesting Pope Sylvester II and Holy Roman Emperor Otto III conspired to add 300 years to the Roman calendar. The motivations for such a drastic action remain a subject of debate, but examples like this introduce a question. What else may have been altered or omitted from our collective memory? Sometimes these alternative historical narratives are encoded into our modern media, culture, and collective consciousness. One such example is Season 6, Episode 20 of Star Trek The Next Generation, titled The Chase. This episode revolves around Captain Jean-Luc Picard's pursuit of a cosmic puzzle driven by fragmented ancient artifacts and his dying mentor's plea. Professor Galen, Picard's old archaeology professor, tells Picard he is on the verge of a major discovery that could completely change the way humans look at their past and ancient origins. While on its surface, this episode is an interstellar treasure hunt, a deeper reading reveals layers that point towards Tartaria's existence. As Picard delves deeper into the mystery, he faces not just external adversaries, but also wrestles with the philosophical implications of his search. In a particularly telling dialogue, Professor Galen implores Picard to embrace the mission, equating its significance to historic discoveries. Galen says to Picard, "What if you could have helped Schliemann discover the city of Troy, or been with Mattel as she first stepped on Yasim? How could anything else compare?" This isn't just a passionate plea, it's a reflection of the intrinsic human quest to rediscover and reclaim forgotten truths. While Galen's mention of Mattel and Yasim are completely made up science fiction references, his equating to Schliemann is particularly intriguing, especially in context of the Tartarian discourse. Here's where things get interesting. Heinrich Schliemann was a controversial figure. In addition to his 1871 discovery of the ancient city of Troy, back 20 years earlier in 1850, a young millionaire Schliemann founded a bank in California which rivaled the Rothschilds. Schliemann was repeatedly threatened by Rothschild associates and ended up fleeing California shortly after the San Francisco fire of 1851, which he described in an eyewitness account. Considered one of his most controversial pieces, it was titled Fire and Fever in California and was published in the Sacramento Daily Journal. So, before I read an excerpt of this piece, why was it considered so controversial? Modern scholars will point towards Schliemann's account of the fire as exaggerated and simply not possible. The rate at which he describes iron and brick buildings being destroyed by the fire sounds like something out of science fiction. But if you know anything about the Tartarian narrative, it is often speculated that there was more than we have been told about these city fires across America. Schliemann's account supports this idea. Here's an excerpt from his 1851 account, published in the Sacramento Daily Journal. "A most horrible disaster has befallen this city. A conflagration greater than any of the preceding fires has reduced nearly the whole city to ashes. I arrived here late last night at 10:30 and put up in the Union Hotel on the plaza. I may have slept a quarter of an hour when I was awoke by loud cries in the street, 'Fire! Fire!' and the awful sounds of the alarm bell. I sprung up in all hassle, and looking out the window at the frame building only 20 or 30 paces from the Union Hotel was on fire. I dressed in all haste to get out of the house, but scarcely had I reached the end of Clay Street when I saw already the hotel on fire from which I had just run out. Pushed on by a complete gale, the fire spread with appalling rapidity, sweeping away in a few minutes whole streets of frame buildings. Neither the iron houses nor the brick houses could resist the fury of the element. The latter crumbled together with incredible rapidity, whilst the former got red hot, then white hot, and fell together like card houses. Particularly in the iron houses, people considered themselves perfectly safe, and they remained in them until the last extremity. As soon as the walls of the iron houses got red hot, the goods inside them began to smoke. The inhabitants wanted to get out, but usually it was already too late, for the locks and hinges of the doors having extended or partly melted already by the heat, the doors were no longer to be opened. Sometimes by burning their hands and arms, people succeeded to open the doors to get out, but finding themselves surrounded by an ocean of flames, they made but a few paces, staggered and fell, rose again, and fell in order not to rise any more." If this account of the 1851 San Francisco fire is actually accurate, a few interesting questions are raised. What could cause a fire to get so hot and spread so fast that iron and brick buildings were melted in seconds? that in minutes the entire city was reduced to ashes. For reference, iron's melting point is 2800 degrees, and to melt a building as fast as Schliemann describes, it's simply not feasible under regular conditions. This is precisely why this particular piece by Schliemann is considered to be so controversial and why it has been so highly criticized, because his claims seem too impossible to be true. He makes it sound like the city was hit by some sort of advanced weapon technology that in seconds melted iron beams and toppled brick buildings. But what if this is actually true? What if Schliemann's account was actually historically accurate? What would this mean for our past? And most of all, with so many other historical figures to choose from, why did the Star Trek writers pick Schliemann to reference in the first place? I believe that this reference to Schliemann was not simply a tip of the hat to his discovery of Troy to be in parallel with Professor Galen's discovery of the progenitors, but rather the writers picked Schliemann because of who he was and what he wrote about. His accounts of the San Francisco City fire align perfectly with the Tartarian narrative, especially in context of the Star Trek episode being about the pursuit of our lost past and origins. In The Chase, Professor Galen was obsessed with the past. He was presented to the audience as an alternative thinker, or even a pseudoscientist by some standards. Just listen to these lines between Picard and Professor Galen in the episode. Picard, your published writings have been sporadic for the last decade. Your appearance at symposia has been rare, or scheduled and then cancelled at the last moment. The finest archaeologist of the century is now shrouded with a cloak of mystery. Galen, and as a result, my reputation has grown, no doubt. Picard, I've never heard of anybody that didn't love a good mystery. Despite Picard's good-natured response, the sentiment in the scene is clear, that Galen's pursuit of this line of research has taken a toll on his reputation with his academic peers. Galen believed he was tracking archaeological patterns which contained the code to a long-forgotten knowledge. As a result, he was judged and had his reputation sullied. However, in the end, Dr. Galen was right. Similarly, Heinrich Schliemann was and still is looked down upon by many in the mainstream academic community. His work is often regarded with great skepticism and critique. This is not only for his account of the San Francisco City fire, but also many initially doubted his discovery of the ancient city of Troy. While most historians now agree that the place Schliemann identified was actually Troy, during his lifetime he was never really appreciated for the discovery. Similarly, Professor Galen dies before his research came into fruition, leaving Picard to make the groundbreaking discovery of the progenitor race. In Star Trek lore, the progenitor race is the true origin of humanity. They are the initial species of humanoid who seeded the galaxy with other humanoids, which as a side note bridges a striking parallel with the ancient Sumerian belief in the Anunnaki. Often referred to today as the ancient astronaut theory, the ancient Sumerians taught that the Anunnaki were an advanced extraterrestrial race who genetically modified and seeded humanity on Earth. If The Chase serves as a touchstone for our discussion on hidden histories, it's worth noting that the narrative framework of Star Trek The Next Generation often dances around themes that challenge the status quo. By design or sheer coincidence, the episodes often mirror the subterranean currents of debate that flow in the world of historical and archaeological research, especially around subjects like Tartaria. Another episode that beckons a closer look at human history is Contagion. On the surface, it's a tale of technological failure leading to disaster. However, as is often the case with TNG, the philosophical underpinnings provide fodder for deeper introspection. As Picard and his crew stumble upon the remains of a once profound and highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization, he remarks, "The victors invariably write the history to their own advantage." This line, though framed in an extra-galactic context, holds profound resonance for our discussion. The question then arises, how much of our history, as we know it, is written by the victors? How many empires, like Tartaria, might have faded into obscurity, not due to the ravages of time, but because of the intentional efforts of those who won the conflicts of their era? Drawing parallels to Earth's architectural wonders, one might consider the pyramids of Giza, the precision vases of the Cairo Museum, the granite diorite boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara, or the grand statues of Ramses at Luxor. Mainstream historians attribute these constructions to known ancient civilizations, but alternative theories often point towards lost civilizations or even extraterrestrial influence. While it's a stretch to equate an episode of TNG with a definitive argument for such claims, the thematic resonance is hard to ignore. Historical erasures aren't just about forgetting, they're also about selective remembering. This concept is not alien to the world of Star Trek. The series constantly nudges its audience to challenge accepted narratives and to seek the truth, however uncomfortable or paradigm-shifting it might be. To further the argument, the very essence of the iconoclasm in the Byzantine Empire or the burning of the Library of Alexandria was about controlling information, narratives, and, in essence, the truth. The loss of the vast knowledge stored in the Library of Alexandria is akin to a civilization losing part of its soul. What truths, technologies, and tales did we lose in those flames? Tartaria, as proponents argue, might represent a similar loss, not by accident, but by design. And while Star Trek doesn't directly allude to the Empire, its consistent theme of uncovering hidden truths and challenging dominant narratives provide a thought-provoking backdrop for this discourse. The unfolding narrative of the chase culminates in a revelation that connects diverse species, humans, Klingons, Romulans, and Cardassians, to a singular ancient origin. They are, in a sense, united by a shared genetic heritage, emanating from an ancient progenitor race. This resolution, where species at odds discover a shared ancestry, metaphorically mirrors the uncovering of lost histories and civilizations on Earth. For a viewer well acquainted with the Tartarian discourse, it's hard to dismiss the allegorical similarities. Just as the different races in TNG grapple with the revelation of their intertwined ancestry, the proposed existence of the Tartarian Empire suggests a forgotten connective tissue binding various cultures and histories together. The key takeaway from the episode is not merely the revelation itself, but the journey towards it. It underscores the importance of curiosity, tenacity, and most importantly, openness to truths that might contradict established beliefs. In our own historical narrative, the quest for Tartaria represents a similar journey. The Empire's existence, though disputed, finds echoes in artifacts, documents, and architectural wonders spread across continents. These are not just remnants of brick and mortar, but potential testimonies of a shared cultural and architectural heritage that mainstream historical narratives have chosen to overlook or misinterpret. Picard's venture, driven by passion and a quest for truth, draws another striking parallel with explorers and historians who have sought to uncover the mysteries of our world. These individuals often go against the grain, challenging established narratives and enduring skepticism, much like Picard does when confronted with skepticism from both foes and allies. But why would history, whether on a starship or Earth, be obscured or altered? Why, for instance, do we not have an explanation to these old maps depicting Tartaria as the eminent power of Eastern Europe and Asia? Why do we not have an explanation to the Perry-Reese map of 1513 depicting Antarctica as a green and lush terrain, despite Antarctica not being officially discovered until 1820? What happened to this flag of the Tartarian wyvern? Is it true that St. George is depicted as slaying the Tartarian wyvern on the Russian imperial flag? And what really happened to all those city fires across America? The answer, perhaps, lies in the inherent human tendency to consolidate power and to control narratives. Captain Picard's poignant observation from Contagion that the victors invariably write the history to their own advantage is not mere fiction. It's a reflection of countless civilizations throughout our history. Empires rise and fall, and when they do, it's not just the political landscape that undergoes a transformation. The very narrative of history, culture, and identity is susceptible to alterations. By controlling the story, victors can legitimize their rule, diminish the legacy of their adversaries, and shape the socio-political landscape to their advantage. In the context of Tartaria, the Empire's potential erasure might not just be the result of its downfall, but could signify a systematic effort by succeeding powers to overshadow its influence and legacy. And here, Star Trek serves as more than just entertainment. It offers a lens through which we can re-examine our understanding of the past. In the cosmos of history, both real and fictional, the boundaries of truth are ever blurring. Star Trek: The Next Generation, with its captivating narratives and profound allegories, invites us to question what we accept as historical truth. The enigma of Tartaria, like the cryptic puzzle pieces in The Chase, represents a potentially overlooked facet of our shared history. Just as Captain Picard's voyages urge us to confront uncomfortable realities and the rewriting of galactic history, our earthly chronicles, brimming with gaps, ambiguities, and suppressed narratives, beckon us to seek the obscured and the forgotten. The parallels between Picard's revelations and the mysteries surrounding Tartaria serve as a stark reminder. Our understanding of the past is only as accurate as the narratives we choose to embrace. As we journey through the vast annals of time, may we remain ever vigilant, ever curious, always striving to piece together the hidden truths that shape who we are.